everybody. Welcome to the show. Place Navigators here. Thank you so much for coming on here. It's me, Chris Elder, and my partner in crime.
Joe Platz with Place.
Yes. Place Navigators. Hey, guys. So our last episode, we talked about from going from disqualified to qualified and why so many people hesitate to take action. We also talked about how 90% of millionaires own real estate. So if you want to be a millionaire, God is buying real estate is your shortcut to that.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm super excited, brother. This is going to be a great episode. It's kind of honing in on some of our strategies that we have out there. I know when I first started, my strategy was I was 20 going on 21 years old, and this whole entire paying people rent just wasn't working for me. And I really wanted to figure out a way that I didn't have to pay rent anymore. And when you move into someone's apartment or home that you're renting, not paying them rent, it's not a cool gig.
You mean they weren't okay with that?
No, man, it's hey, some people are like, oh, that's what I did, and I'm like, wow, how do you go around doing that? So without doing that, I found a way to not pay rent, and that was by owning my own real estate and using some of the strategies that we are going to talk today.
Yeah. I love it, Chris. I think that there is this critical element that if you don't have a plan, it's just a wish. And I also think that we got to be clear on what that end goal was. What I heard you say was that you were really clear that you were trying to create what we'd look at today as, or we terminology, or give it the term, as cash flow. You wanted to make it so that you were living for the least amount of money possible and ideally free. And that is one strategy. Some people's strategy might be further out on the horizon. They might be looking at retirement. Maybe they have a sufficient income today that their today living cost or their today chosen lifestyle doesn't necessarily compel them for that same reason, but they've got a future goal. And so it sounds like when we talked to you about your story in episode 2, like maybe lifestyle was one of your least considerations. Is that true?
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking too far ahead. I'll tell you that right now. I was just purely looking at, I didn't like paying for other people's mortgages, and I just wanted to figure out how to be rent free. And when I was shopping for houses, there's the single family homes that are out there, and I was looking at those at first, and I was like, man, this doesn't make sense. How does someone like me making maybe, I don't know, maybe $1,200, $1,400 a month? Not much, man, because everybody was qualifying for those loans. The shoe shiner had the loan, my landscaper had the loan. Okay, I didn't have a landscaper back then, but what I'm saying, like it was crazy. And so I happened to be able to get one of those loans. I didn't use my VA loan like a lot of people think that I did. I used a conventional occupant loan, and I bought me a multi-family home, not a single family home. And there's a place for every single strategy, but the multifamily is what allowed me to start building a cash flow and made it to where I ended up not paying anything in rent. And in fact, I was making a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think that's important. I think that's a good segue, Chris, to just talk about like these core strategies, because you and I are both real estate investors, but it sounds like our journeys are on a different path, but our destination is similar. This is what I believe. I believe we buy single family homes, especially as an entry level real estate investor. I believe we buy single family homes for one purpose, and that is to build long-term wealth. And here's the reason why. A single family home is the one that is most easily one that you can track appreciation on. It's also what everybody wants as long as you buy right. So what happened to me is I had to change my buy box after what we experienced in that 2008, 9, 10, and 11 thing. Because when I first entered in as a real estate investor, I was willing to buy pretty much anything I could close. So, I had a budget, it was tight, lending was sketch, like you're talking about. And so after that experience, what I realized was, for me, I was only going to look for a particular product, and primarily single family. And that was going to be a home that had at least 3 bedrooms, at least 2 toilets, because by this time I had a toddler that was potty training and I understood the value of that. And then I knew that in all of my consults that I did as a realtor, because I started in 2003, in all of my consults, I knew that there was a reoccurring theme. It was the 3 bedrooms, it was the 2 toilets, but what it also was they either wanted a garage or a yard, and ideally both. So the buy box became 3 bed, 2 bath, garage or yard, preferably both, in the best school district I could afford to invest in. And that's because in any market, whether the market is up or the market is down, that home sells if I need to liquidate, right? I had some catastrophic thinking after 2008, and that home rents regardless of the market, especially in a catastrophic time, because people are usually blown out of their houses. So strategy one is, if we're building long-term wealth, I think single family homes is a great tool. But what you're doing is you're buying multifamily. We talked in the last episode, you had 7 going on 8 doors. And the strategy behind multifamily is, first, cash flow, right? And so we showed how you had a positive cash flow, your rent's paid, and those properties appreciate too. But the number one driver that makes a multifamily property appreciate is the income it creates. So you have the onus as the landlord, as the owner of those, to make sure that you keep your rents within the market. Is that something that you've kind of discovered in your journey that's critical?
Yeah, I think that, so here's a couple different things with this, right? You could either manage it yourself and figure out all this stuff, or you could shortcut it and go with a management company. They're going to collect a small fee, but they're going to take a lot of that out of your hands, where you don't have to figure that out. You just literally say, I want to make X. And if it makes sense, obviously someone might have to bring you back to reality on your number. But if it's a realistic number, it's quite possible. And then you're paying someone else to deal with everything else. We did that for the first couple of days or months. And I don't want to tell you who messed it up for me, but
maybe a future episode. Maybe this is like a little cliffhanger.
Yeah,
We
maybe
should do one that's like all of our screw ups. Like that would
my,
be, well, I mean, I tend to like try to have voluntary amnesia on those, but maybe we should like sit down, make some notes about all of our biggest real estate screw ups, and then just see if we can't like either get a therapist to take pity on us or create some entertainment or something.
I've definitely made some real estate screw ups.
Listen, man, nobody successful doesn't have a history, so to speak. So, I'm a little leery of somebody that's only had good days in their career, in their investing, in life. Like if you haven't had a hiccup or two, I can't trust you, bro. Because you just haven't been on the field long enough.
And the thing is, hey, we learned all that. And we started managing it ourselves. And we would literally pull up Zillow, we'd pull up all the different rental applications out there, and we would see, okay, what is everybody charging for what we have? And is that close to what we have? And we've always kept underneath that number.
Yeah.
And we've been rented out. My rental properties have remained, knocking on wood here, 100% rented out. There's no gaps. Short-term rentals is a little bit different, and
different strategy.
And that's a totally different strategy. And I don't even think we're going to really get into short-term rentals into this episode. But there's just there's so many different ways to do it. And I think that that cash flow, once you realize how to get that cash flow And it may not happen your first couple of years. It may take a couple of years going with the strategy that this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
And then once you're done, once you get to the point and your cash flow is good, you're like, wow, I collect I collect rent, I collect money by just sitting here and twiddling my thumbs.
Mailbox money, they call it. Yeah. Yeah.
It just keeps coming
So
in.
yeah, I mean, you bring up probably the greatest point about real estate that I think that there is, and that is real estate is a long game. The only people that get hurt in real estate are the people that are jumping in and jumping out. To be honest with you, in my journey, I actually quit flipping homes for resale. If I do a flip, I flip to keep. So I'll buy a dog single family home and I'll clean it up, make it something nice enough that I would move my family into, and then put it into our rental portfolio. And for me, I just found from a strategy perspective that that's better, because one of the things that I also adopted in my strategy, and this is why some people have a blend of strategies, and this is also why you got to pick what's right for you, and maybe you even make a pivot, is where I'm at today is I actually have a goal to never sell real estate again. I want to buy real estate. I want to buy multiple pieces of real estate every single year, as much as I'm able to buy, but I don't ever want to sell. I just want to like play Monopoly, but play it to keep kind of thing. So one of the things that we see on this journey is the first kind of why in the road when somebody comes to us as real estate professionals and says, hey, I want to be a real estate investor, is we need to first to have some clarity of what's the strategy. Is the strategy long-term wealth building, or is the strategy cash flow? And then one of the things that we see is sometimes we kind of graduate people up, and we do it through something called a 1031 exchange. And what that is the IRS has given us a provision in the tax code that if we sell one asset that has a capital gain and exchange it for another asset without actually touching the money, that's what the facilitator does, is they transfer the equity from one property to another, is that we can create a better return on investment because of the magic of leverage. When we have a lot of equity in a property, if it's just sitting there, it's kind of what we like to call in the industry dead money. But if we take that and all of a sudden we say we've got a duplex that we could leverage into, say, a sixplex or an eightplex, now all of a sudden our rental income's up, our year over year appreciation's up, and all those things are up. So Chris, in your journey, when did you take a property and use it as a stepping stone to get to the next level that you were getting at your investing?
I love this. And the 1031 is such a fabulous tool for people to step themselves up. And it's just kind of like this. When you bought your first car, Joe,
Mhm.
was it a Ferrari? Was it a
Yeah, it's a
Porsche?
1972 F100 right off the farm. Still had some cow, you know what, on the tires.
Oh man, a good old F100, man. You can't
Yeah,
find those are hard to find nowadays,
I
man. And
know. Still got it.
um, that vehicle that you bought, right? Uh, isn't necessarily going to be your vehicle for the rest of your
Yeah.
life. So you got to look at homes and that
Hmm.
aspect as well. This Your first home may not be your forever home in
Hmm.
this strategy, but if you treat it as a transaction, like, hey, I'm moving to this house, I'm going to stay here for 5 years. I'm going to do some minor upgrades, make it nice for me to live in, because I know if it's nice for me, other people are going to want to buy it if I stick to the
Yeah,
three
let's not
two
be
car
slumlords.
garage, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what we did essentially with one of our houses, where we had almost a 25% increase in a matter of a couple of years, and it allowed us to put a large down payment on another property because we were only in there for about 4 years, and that was such a phenomenal tool that 1031 allowed us to avoid all not avoid but reinvest
Defer.
into our real estate and our family and
Hmm.
all that stuff. And it's just stepping up. It's a step up, and that's how you should be looking at it. If you are a first time buyer, you're not buying your forever home your first time. You should
Yeah.
try to buy that home that you want to use to get to that bigger, nicer place.
Well,
So
and I think that's true. Sorry, I might have interrupted you there, but I think that's true on your first investment property too. Your first investment property might not be a property you retain forever, but it could be. Yeah, and so there's a lot less emotion attached to these when we're treating them like the tools that they are, right? And so you made that move from um, basically having the property that you had for 4 years, doing a 1031, upgrading into a property that increased your probably your door count, your revenue, and probably your net operating income, right? Okay, you're giving me the yes. So that's a strategy. Some people do this with kind of the live in flip mentality, right? The IRS says that if you own or occupy a home for 2 years, and it's actually 2 out of the last five, which is super confusing language, hashtag government, right? But if you occupy a home that 2 out of the last 5 years, that you can take your equity gains tax free. It's $250,000 for an individual and 500,000 for a married couple. And so I know somebody right now, and they might be listening to the show, so I'm going to be a little bit cryptic, but they may be living on an island out in the Pacific Ocean where we got attacked one time, near there on the beach in a multi-million-dollar home. And for the time that I knew them, what they did is they'd buy a home, they'd live in it for 2 years, almost to the day. They'd fix it up, they'd sell it, they'd buy another home, and now they're literally living on the beach, barbecuing. When I talked to him on the phone, he's like, "Yeah, man, you need to fly out here. Like the sea turtles come up and hang out by the barbecue while I'm cooking dinner." And they're living a great life, but they moved a lot and they lived in their kind of fix and flips where they moved those further and further. Right. In episode 2, we also talked about other loan products. If you're not going to live in those, you guys can tune into that to check that out. But kind of moving the conversation forward. See, I'm so excited to talk about is, Chris, what defines a commercial property?
So anything that commercial property is actually defined by words. It has to be in a commercial area, unless it's unless it's been grandfathered or something like that, and it's going to be hosting shops and stores and that kind of stuff. So commercial is a little bit different. Actually, it's a lot different than how houses are handled,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot harder to break into, but not as hard as you think it is. It's only harder because a lot of us are stuck in the house mode, not in the commercial real estate mode.
Right. So in the house world and multifamily at 5 units or more, you have to secure commercial financing. And that does scare some people off, but here's the thing. That just shouldn't probably be your first one, right? When you have the equity, so if you can make a fair assumption, if you've got 30% down and you got a credit score and verifiable income and you file your tax returns, we can get you financing, right? We can get you the financing. So what happens is you buy that property, it appreciates a ton. Like I'll talk about a property we liquidated and gladly. I'm making up words. We gladly
Yeah, I'm
liquidated.
good at that too, man. I can
Yeah,
make up
are
all
you?
sorts of
Sweet.
words.
We'll have a tutorial and a thesaurus later for people to cross reference what the heck we're talking about. But one of the things I bought before I created my More Clear buy box is I bought a 2 bed 2 bath condo. And that condo seemed to make a lot of sense because it was pet friendly and it had 2 parking spaces, and like it worked for roommates, it worked for a married couple, it worked for a single parent, maybe a couple with like a young child. Like I felt like it made a lot of sense. The complex had a pool and a hot tub, because in Seattle, Washington, I mean, shoot, you got all these beautiful days to hang out in the pool, right? And what I discovered is that the construction of the complex was very poorly done. It was very substandard construction. And so what I was afraid of the fact that it was likely going to be subject to something called special assessments and that they were going to be pretty costly. We actually walked through a journey of replacing the windows. We replaced 3 windows. Well, 2 windows and a sliding glass door because this thing was a monster at 848 square feet. And the process and the cost that we had to go through was out of this world. And here's the thing: the protocol that they made us go through, I had to contact 7 different contractors to find somebody who would even follow their protocol because they had hired a consultant. And so when we got to a certain place where the equity was really good in that property, the market was good, right? You talked about reading the market on the one you sold after 4 years, and we knew that we didn't for sure have a special assessment coming. We just had a feeling that it was headed that way. We took an exit on that. We took that cash and we reinvested it into other things. And so if you have the desire to look at some of these assets that are more commercial, there's a whole new horizon out there. There's multifamily properties, there's mixed use properties, there's straight commercial properties, industrial, warehouse, office, retail, right? There's so many different ways you can take this. And there's also a large variance in your responsibility as the owner. Sometimes there's like absolute net leases where the occupant of that space is responsible for all the maintenance. Now, it might pay a lower return, but it's got no headaches with it, right? Sometimes, like I've been involved in some stuff with like up Bartels, right? They'll lease that building for 10, 15 years, right? So you have guaranteed income for a long time and you trust the company that's there that they're going to pay the rent. So, when you're taking something like maybe it was the condo that all of a sudden you're pulling out, 6 figures worth of equity on it, you can leverage that equity then into something that might be bigger than the horizon you're thinking of if you're just thinking single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex. And honestly, we've helped some of our clients build tremendous portfolios and tremendous wealth, helping them understand where that equity needs to go to create the highest return on investment possible. I think the moral of the story is it's just not an emotional conversation. It becomes very much about numbers and understanding those numbers and how we're going to make those numbers work for you.
Yeah, and the multi-commercial aspect as well. You were talking about how there's some leases where you have no responsibility for the maintenance, and they also have their own stuff that they'll install for like stores and stuff like that. So what if you get like a really successful store and you have a gross lease with them? What can that do for you if you have a successful store in there?
Well, I mean, it's really putting the money to work for you, because if they're responsible for everything. So we talked about an absolute net lease. That's where they're taking everything. A gross lease usually includes a utility. So maybe you have a property manager that's making sure the utilities are getting paid and the taxes are getting paid. Sometimes we talk about triple net leases or net leases where taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance or other things are in that mix, common area lighting, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of nuances. I wouldn't get so wrapped up in the nuances of it, but when you have the right tenant and the right agreement, and you have that little to no headache situation, you're literally just watching the money come in, right? When you go to sell that, it's valued based on its income. And what's also really common in a commercial lease, not only are they commonly multi-year, which I kind of want to roll back to something you said a minute ago on that, Chris, but not only are they multi-year, but they almost always have a year-over-year rent escalation built into the agreement. So you're getting a 2%, 3%, in some cases as high as a 5% year-over-year rent increase. And so it really becomes kind of a set it and forget it situation. Chris, going back a little bit to residential, you were talking about how you always price a little bit under the market. And I know some guys, I like to hang out with the old guys in real estate and try to glean their wisdom. And, so they say things like, gosh, every dumb thing I bought, if I waited long enough, it looks smart in the end, because that property naturally appreciated, even if it wasn't maybe the best buy at the beginning. And then the other thing that I see is a lot of our more seasoned veteran landlords. They absolutely believe in pricing about 10% under market rents and then screening deeply. And I know you talked about that in episode 2, like screening's like part of your secret sauce. and they screen legally, but very deeply, to find that person that they believe are going to stay there for a long time. Because I'd guess, and you can confirm for me, that the biggest expense is a turnover on a property. Is that the biggest
Absolutely,
expense?
absolutely, because you got to think that you're going to lose that month's rent. You're going to have to go in there, and between people, you need to make sure that it's cleaned up. That's your time to paint. That's your time to do any major maintenance that you're probably waiting on. I still try to do major maintenance while they're in there. I just schedule it with the tenants. It's nice for tenants to get a new kitchen. It's nice for, like, especially because my tenants, they stay in there for years and years and years. So I got to really
It's
plan
changing.
some of that with them being in there. And how do I keep them? I'm I'm well below I'm
Mm-hmm.
well below it, and I'm not looking at getting. Um, I'm not being greedy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to be a slumlord either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of it's a happy it's a happy little spot, and the longer I keep my renters in there, the better.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
Absolutely.
about relationships, like I said at the beginning in episode
Yeah,
two.
even from the Undertaker. Every business requires relationships. Yep. They're all
Exactly.
people businesses. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
and guys, with all these different strategies, you need to really look at mixing it up. Don't just try to stick to one, but hone in on it, learn it, read it, talk to people like Joe, like myself, or someone that's proven, and just pick their brain. That's what we're here for.
yeah. Yeah. As you do it, you will get clear on where you want to laser beam your focus, right? We've made a couple passing comments about short term rentals. I think there's a tremendous opportunity with those, and I've learned a lot. And it was a new thing for me because that wasn't as popular 21 years ago when I got started in real estate, right? You wanted a short term place to stay, you went to the Motel 6, right? You didn't go on Airbnb, you know. I saw this thing, Chris. We'll land the plane here, but I saw this thing that said, growing up, we were told, not to talk to strangers, don't ever get in their car, all that kind of stuff. And now, we pull out our phone, we order up a stranger, we get in their car, and we have them take us wherever we want to go, and then we might even go sleep in their house. So, we break all the rules that our moms told us growing up, with the invention of Uber and Airbnb and VRBO and all that good stuff. So it's pretty wild. Uh-oh. Looks like Chris froze on me. Well, hey, this is Joe Platz with Place Navigators and Chris Elder. We are super excited that you joined us again for episode 3. Stay tuned, and we'll look forward to catching you on the next one. In the meantime, if we can help you with anything regarding buying, selling, or investing in real estate, reach out to us. www.joeplatz.com is where you can find us, and click on our profiles and find our contact information there. We'll talk to you soon.